And everyone can be seated. Good morning, members of the jury.
Good morning.
At this time, the attorneys will have the opportunity to make their opening statements in which they may give you a summary of the facts they expect the evidence will show. As I explained to you on Friday, the statements of the attorneys are not to be considered by you either as evidence or as your instructions on the law. Nevertheless, these statements are important. They're intended to help you properly understand the case. Accordingly, I'm going to ask that you give them your undivided attention. State.
Thank you, Judge. Counsels.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
First, I want to, on behalf of myself, Mr. Pruner, Ms. Blevins, and the state of Florida, I want to thank you for your time and patience and your diligence last week. I know it was a long process getting a jury. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one thing that wasn't really touched on in jury selection is what is the purpose of a trial. The purpose of a trial is to find the truth. It's to find the truth about what happened at a different time and a different place. And it's going to be your job to find the truth. It's going to be your job to judge the facts and judge the defendant. The questions you're going to have to answer. Did the defendant know what she was doing and the consequences of what she was doing? If she knew, did she know it was wrong? Those are the questions you're going to have to answer. And one thing you should think about when you think about that question is what the defendant said. This is the worst thing I have ever done. I think I feel horrible. I just feel horrible. That's what she told detectives on January 28, 2011. But what did she do? Well, the evidence is going to show that the Schenecker family was a military family. The father, Parker Schenecker, was a career military officer. He had risen to the rank of colonel. Then there was the defendant, Julie Schenecker, the wife. And you're also going to hear that they had two beautiful children. They had a daughter in 1994. They had a son named Bo. He was born in 1997. So in January 2011, Calix would have been 16, Bo would have been 13. And these were kids that were active. Calix was a cross-country runner. She was doing very well in school. Bo was a soccer player. And they would have to drive their kids to and from school, drive them to and from practices. What you'll hear is that as a military family, they moved around a lot. They had been stationed in Germany. They had been stationed in Hawaii. They had been stationed in Pennsylvania. And eventually they got stationed in Tampa. And what you're going to hear is that from all outside appearances, this would appear to be a normal, happy family. But what you're going to hear is inside the residence, it wasn't so, because the defendant was bipolar. She had suffered this disease for several years. She was bipolar, and she would have bouts of depression. And what you're going to hear is that this would affect her ability to take the kids around and do daily activities like a mother should do. But what you would hear is that when the father needed to be stationed or go out abroad, she would always say, "I got this." And she would take care of the kids, take care of the household. Now, as Calix became older, became a teenager, conflict started between her and the defendant. Conflict that got uglier as Calix got older. She became more mouthy, disrespectful. She would say mean things to her mom. She would be very agitated with her mother and her mother's activities. And this a lot of conflict between her and her mother. It caused pain to her mother. And what you're going to hear is that in 2010, the defendant and the daughter, their relationship was very poor. If they talked to each other, it was usually in the form of arguing. If they talked to each other, there was usually name calling. And what you're going to hear is that the defendant did not handle this well. And she started drinking. And she started popping pills. And she did this to numb the pain. And this is how she was conducting herself in 2010. You're going to hear that she didn't believe she had an alcohol and drug problem. She didn't want to seek help. And the father, recognizing that there was an issue with drugs and alcohol, wanted her to seek help. But she didn't want that help. And this caused conflict between the father. Because what you're going to hear is that the defendant considered the father uncompassionate. He didn't understand her disease. And she was becoming angry at him. And what you're going to hear is that she's got a bad relationship with the husband. There's ongoing resentment. There's conflict. She's got a bad relationship with the daughter. There's conflict. And she was angry. Now, as we get from December into January, on January 19th, 2011, Mr. Schenecker, or Colonel Schenecker, was planned to have to go overseas, to go into the Middle East on assignment. And at that point, Colonel Schenecker went to his wife and said, you know, I got to go. Will you be able to handle this? And again, she said, I got this. And she started taking on her responsibilities. But what you're going to hear is that she sensed divorce. An email had gone out amongst the family members that she was not allowed to see. She perceived it as something about divorce, that the husband wanted a divorce. So now, this is in her mind. He wants a divorce. My daughter doesn't like me. I have a poor relationship with her. She's turned against me. My husband's turned against me. And the son was starting to follow the daughter's behavior. Now she was losing her son. In effect, losing her family. January 19, 2011, Colonel Schenecker leaves. The defendant starts doing the activity she's supposed to be doing, driving the kids around, making appointments, getting her prescription medications filled, doing these normal things that she needs to do. And what you're going to hear is that there is driving a car. Then on Saturday, January 22nd, she takes the kids to their practices, watches Bo play soccer, and then drops them off at home. She then drives to Oldsmar. Why is she going to Oldsmar? She's going to Oldsmar and she goes to a place called Lock and Load. It's a gun store. What you're going to hear is that she planned to kill her children. Not just kill them, but murder them with a firearm. So she goes to the Lock and Load. And you're going to hear from two clerks that work there, a Ralph Monaco and a Gerald Tanso. They were the people who dealt with Ms. Schenecker there. They're going to tell you that she seemed pleasant. She didn't seem depressed. She was articulate. She made eye contact with them. She shook their hand. And she looked at firearms. And then she purchased a firearm. She bought a .38 revolver. She filled out the forms, because you have to fill out forms in order to purchase a firearm here in Florida. She paid with a credit card. And what you're going to hear is, and see, because you're actually going to get to see the video from that Lock and Load of Ms. Schenecker looking at guns, standing there, looking at the clerks, shaking hands. You will get to see that video of how she was behaving on January 22nd. Now what you're going to hear is that she planned a Saturday massacre, and that she was disappointed that there was a 3-day waiting period. So she has to wait to get her gun. And what you're going to hear is that the days go on. Sunday, Saturday, Monday, Tuesday. Tuesday, her daughter calls her evil. Tuesday, her daughter tells her, you need to dress up for this appointment at school. You need to put on makeup. And that bothers the defendant. Wednesday passes. She makes dinner, a chicken dinner, her daughter's favorite. Thursday comes. It's now been 5 days since she had purchased the firearm. It's now Thursday, January 27, 2011. On Thursday, that day, she drives to Oldsmar from New Tampa. Drives her car to Oldsmar to get her gun. She purchases, and you'll get to see video of her getting this gun. She buys 38 caliber bullets, hollow point bullets. What you're going to hear is that the clerks ask her, any particular reason why you're getting a gun? There's conversation about that. She indicates, well, there were 4 or 5 home invasions or burglaries in my neighborhood, and I want it for protection. She lies to the clerks as to why she wants this gun. Because remember, she wanted a Saturday massacre. She buys the gun, takes it home. That evening, Bo Schenecker has soccer practice. What you're going to hear is that Bo gets into the front seat of their minivan. The defendant is driving. They leave their house. They're driving down the road, and she pulls out the gun. And Bo sees the gun, and she knows that it frightens Bo. And what you're going to hear is that she fires one shot into the windshield, which, again, scares Bo Schenecker, the victim. What you're going to hear is that he basically tells her, put that away. Put that away or I'm going to punch you. And before she puts it away, she's driving. Bo Schenecker is to her right. She points it at his head. Bam! She shoots him in the left side of his head. Shoots him dead at close range. What you're going to hear is that she then turns her car around and she drives home. You're going to hear that she parks her car, her minivan, in the garage, closes the garage doors. And at that point, she takes her gun, bam, shoots her son a second time in the face area, around the upper lip, mouth. The mouth that was disrespecting her as well. The sassy mouth, as she called it. Her son is dead in the car. She gets out of her minivan and basically walks into her house. And at some point, she goes upstairs where her daughter, Calix, is working on the computer. And what you're going to hear is that she walks up close behind her, and Calix says, "What are you doing?" And the defendant basically responds, "Just seeing what you're doing." She raises the gun up. Bam! Shoots her in the back of the head. And Calix Schenecker's body falls to the left in her chair. Blood pouring out of her head. Blood onto the floor. And what you're going to hear is that the defendant then shoots her in her mouth. Bam! The sassy mouth, as the defendant called it. And then the 2 children are dead at the hands of their own mother. And you may ask yourself, how do we know all of this? How do we know these specifics about what she intended to do, what she did, how she did it, why she did it? Because the defendant wrote about it in a journal. When the police found her in her residence the next day, January 28th, they found a journal in the house. And the defendant wrote in the journal as to what she did and why she did it. Some of the things she wrote is, "I did all my duties, then went to buy a gun. I was planning on a Saturday massacre, but have to wait on the background investigate for 3 days." She planned a Saturday massacre. Calix, she gets it first. Tuesday entry. Calix was so shitty yesterday when she said, "Wear makeup and dress tomorrow for the mandatory meeting." She called me pathetic. On Saturday, she called me an evil soul. Bo has become sassy since you left, copying Calix's attitude. It kills me now that he's turned on me. He has to come along with us. Parker, I'm sorry, so sorry. I don't know what to say, but I sensed divorce was inevitable, but I can't live alone. Calix drove me to drink. I've offed Bo on the way to practice. He saw the gun and told me to put it back in the purse. He had a healthy fright. I accidentally shot the window. I shot him one extra shot through the side of the head. Then when we got home, a shot to his mouth because he became so mouthy, just like Calix. Drove the van into the garage, in parentheses, telling everyone we're going to New NYC, parentheses. They'll wonder where the van is. I would like to overdose and not use the gun because her plan was she would kill the children and kill herself. I would like to overdose and not use the gun. I've seen how much destruction it causes, and I probably won't to get 2 shots off. I could have done this any time, even when you were here. Luckily you weren't. I might have taken you out too. That would have been a crying shame. Those are some of the things she writes in her journal. And you'll get to see that journal. And how do we know it's her journal? Her DNA is found on that journal. Her fingerprints are found on that journal. That's what she wrote. Now, the children are dead around somewhere on the 27th. Hours pass. The defendant takes basically an overdose of lithium and Coumadin. Lithium is a mood stabilizer. Coumadin is for blood thinning. These are her prescription medications. But she doesn't die. What you're going to hear is January 28, 2011, in the morning, the police arrive. They're there basically for a welfare check. They find the defendant in the back on the lanai. She's a little bit groggy, a little bit out of it. One of the first things she tells him is that she's bipolar. She has blood on her robe, a white robe. She has blood on her hands. She has blood on her wristwatch. And they ask about it. Are you injured? What's the source of this blood? And her response is, no, I wish a scratch was the source of this blood. She indicates my husband's going to be so distraught. Where are the kids? She basically tells him where the kids are. And the police, they start looking through the house. And they find the children. They find Calix in her bed with a blanket over her. They find the .38 revolver. They find Bo Schenecker still in the minivan, or van. He's got a blanket over him. Crime scene detectives are called. You're going to hear that they find ammunition. They find her purse, which has the receipt for the lock and for the gun, instructions for the gun. You're going to hear that they find the journal. And they find pills, prescription pills. What you're going to hear is that the gun is taken to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and is compared to the casing inside the revolver and also to the projectiles recovered from the body of Calix Schenecker. They match the gun. You're going to hear that they take the journal and they find a spot of what appears to be blood. It is the DNA of the defendant. You're going to hear that the journal is looked at for fingerprints. They find the defendant's fingerprints on the journal. You're also going to hear from detectives who did a post-Miranda statement with the defendant, a tape-recorded statement. What did she tell them? I shot her in the back of the head because she was running her mouth and shot her, I think in the mouth, which is consistent with what the detectives find. Shot son because he was copying daughter. Shot him in the side of the head and in his mouth because they were too sassy. Again, consistent with what the detectives found. I didn't know if the neighbors would hear it, but I guess they didn't or they would have come running. This is the worst thing I have ever done. Those are some of the things that they tell the detectives. She tells the detectives. And we suspect that you're probably going to see a video of the defendant after she was taken into custody, after she gave her statement to the police. And you'll see that she's shaking on that video. And you may think, well, she looks crazy. But that is not the question. is her physical appearance. It is her state of mind at the time of the crime. Did she know what she was doing and the consequences of putting a gun to her children's head and pulling the trigger? Did she know that it was wrong? Did she know that society would view it as wrong? Those are the questions you have to answer, because what you're going to see on that video is basically her shaking. And what you're going to probably hear is that shaking is because she overdosed on lithium and Coumadin after she had already formed the intent to kill her children and after she had already done the deed. So ladies and gentlemen, you get to judge the defendant's state of mind at the time of the crime. You get to tell us what the truth is about what happened on January 27, 2011. And after you hear all the evidence, the state is convinced that you will find the defendant guilty as charged of premeditated murder for the death of her son and the death of her daughter. Thank you.